Hi, lovelies. Thank you for joining me on this heartfelt journey. This story is about devotion, second chances, and a love that refused to die. I'm truly grateful you're here to experience it with me. Settle in, and let's step into a love that waited a lifetime. The Houston sun was setting, pouring gold through the tall classroom windows like a gentle blessing, warming the wooden desks and the posters of periodic tables. The school hallways were already quiet, lockers slammed shut, footsteps faded, laughter gone. But one student stayed behind, sitting at the third desk from the front, leaning over his notebook, as if it were the most sacred thing in his world. Kelvin Edward, only 15, with soft brown hair falling across his forehead and eyes too emotional for his age, held his pen like it carried the weight of a confession he had rehearsed 1,000 times but never spoken aloud. His heart was racing, not because he was afraid of exams or grades, not because he feared punishment or detention, but because he was writing a letter, a love letter, to a woman who would never imagine his heart belonged to her. His high school teacher, Deborah Nicholas, 30, graceful, caramel-skinned, with tired tenderness in her eyes, and a voice that made even the roughest students settle. Without a word, she carried herself with quiet authority, professional, poised, intelligent, and yet somehow, unknowingly, she carried hope inside her smile, a hope Kelvin had held on to since the first day he stepped into her classroom. He wrote slowly, carefully, each word from the softest, deepest part of him. Dear Ms. Nicholas, I know I'm only a boy and you're a woman the world admires, but my heart doesn't understand age or rules. It only knows how it feels when you walk into class, like the sun came with you. You once told me potential is a seed that needs the right hands to grow. You believed in me when nobody did, and that changed my life. I want you to know that I see you. I see the kindness you give to everyone. I see the love you put into your work. And maybe you'll forget me someday, but I'll remember you for the rest of my life. You are the first woman my heart ever chose. Kelvin! His handwriting trembled. He read it 3 times, swallowed the heavy ache in his throat, and folded the letter carefully, sliding it into the slim blue envelope. He never intended to send it, never intended for her to see it, never intended for anyone to know. It was simply a truth too strong to live unspoken. He stood up when he heard the familiar soft heels click against the hallway floor. He looked up, and there she was, standing in the doorway, holding her handbag, smiling gently. Kelvin, you're still here. His breath caught. She always said his name softly, like it was made of something fragile. Yes, ma'am, just finishing something. She stepped inside, unaware that her presence alone made the room feel brighter. You need a ride home? It's getting late. He shook his head, forcing a smile. I'll be fine. She nodded, giving him one last warm look, the kind of look that comforted and devastated him at the same time, before walking away. The moment she left, he released a breath he'd been holding too long. He pressed the envelope against his chest. One day, he told himself, one day he would give it to her. One day when he was older, stronger, someone worthy. But that day was not today. He tucked the letter into the back pocket of his notebook and walked out. The next morning felt ordinary until lunchtime came. Kelvin walked into the cafeteria, notebook tucked under his arm, searching for a quiet table. He didn't notice the way 2 of his classmates, the same boys who had always found joy in his quietness, were whispering and grinning maliciously. He sat down, opened his lunch, and the next thing he heard was the rustle of paper and a cruel, loud voice reading, Dear Ms. Nicholas. I know I'm only a boy. His body froze. Every breath left him. His notebook, open on the table, was missing an envelope. His letter. His heart. His humiliation. Laughter exploded around the cafeteria. Girls gasped, boys pointed. Some clutched their stomachs from laughing too hard. He felt his ears ring, his skin burn, his throat close. Someone shouted, he wants to marry the teacher. Another voice added, Kelvin's in love. Who knew? Mockery erupted. Brutal and merciless, and then, like a nightmare tightening around him. Deborah walked into the cafeteria. She paused at the doorway, confused by the commotion. Her eyes scanned the room, saw the cluster of students, saw the torn envelope, saw Kelvin standing pale, broken, breathless. Stop this! She commanded sharply. Her voice silenced the chaos, but the damage was already done. Kelvin's heart felt like it had shattered in 100 pieces across that cafeteria floor. Deborah approached him, her eyes full of concern, not ridicule. "Kelvin, did you write this?" Her tone wasn't judgmental, it was gentle, human. But the humiliation was too much for a 15-year-old boy with a fragile heart and a love too heavy to hide. Tears filled his eyes. She reached for the page as if to protect him, but he pulled away. "I didn't mean for anyone to read it," he whispered. "It wasn't for you." "Not really. Not like this." "Kelvin, this isn't your fault," he cut her off, voice breaking. "I know you don't. You don't see me. And I know I'm stupid for feeling this way." Her expression softened. "You're not stupid." But he couldn't hear her. Not over the echo of laughter. Not over the humiliation roasting his skin. Not over the ache clawing at his chest. He grabbed his bag and ran out of the cafeteria. Out of the school. Out of everything that hurt. He didn't stop running until the world blurred around him. That night his parents sat him down, his father stern, his mother tired. "You're leaving for London," his father said. "You need a fresh start." His chest tightened. "I don't want to go. This situation you created," his father continued. "It has embarrassed you. The school, the teacher. You need distance." Deborah's face flashed in his mind, her apology in her eyes, her concern, her soft voice. He felt her slipping from him already. "You're leaving next week," his mother whispered. "Pack your things." And that was it. He was being torn from the city where his heart lived. On his last day of school, he walked to her classroom during the final period. She stood by her desk sorting papers, and when she saw him, her face softened instantly. "Kelvin, I'm sorry. I wanted to talk to you sooner." He swallowed, stepping closer. "I'm leaving Houston." Her eyes widened. "Leaving? My parents think—" "It's best." A silence stretched between them, full of pain, full of unspoken things. She took a step closer, lowering her voice. "What happened to you was cruel. But your feelings, your letter, it wasn't wrong. It was honest. And I'm honored you thought so highly of me." He looked down. "It doesn't matter now." "It does," she said gently. "You're a bright young man. You'll grow into someone incredible one day." "I already know what I want to be," he whispered. "What's that?" "Someone you can be proud of." Her breath hitched just a little. He walked toward the door but paused, turning back with eyes shimmering with unshed tears. "One day," he said softly, "I'll come back. And when I do, I won't be a boy anymore." She didn't know what to say. Maybe there was nothing she could say. He gave her a final trembling smile. Then he walked away. The plane to London left early the next morning. Kelvin sat by the window, watching Houston shrink beneath him, the city where he learned how beautiful love could be, and how painful. He whispered the promise again, this time into the clouds. "One day, I'll come back for her." He was 15, heartbroken, humiliated, but stronger than he realized. His first love wasn't fading, it was simply waiting. 15 years later, the skyline of Houston looked smaller than Kelvin remembered. Or maybe he had simply grown too much into his height, into his confidence, into the life he had carved with grit and heartbreak. Now 30, a wealthy UK-based businessman with a reputation that traveled ahead of him, Kelvin Edwards stepped out of the sleek black car in front of the luxury hotel hosting his grand corporate expansion dinner. He had built an empire, brick by brick, deal by deal, heartbreak by heartbreak. But tonight wealth wasn't what made his pulse race. It was the fact that he was back in the city where his heart had stayed behind. He hadn't said Deborah's name in years, hadn't allowed himself to search for her online, hadn't dared ask mutual acquaintances about her, but not one day passed without her memory brushing his mind like a quiet ghost. He stepped into the ballroom filled with warm lighting and polished marble floors. Houston elites gathered around crystal tables, clinking glasses, laughing, discussing business and politics. He shook hands, exchanged polite greetings, wore the practiced smile of a man who had learned to hide his heart behind charm and power. But beneath the surface, a soft ache hummed. Would he see her again? Would she look the same? Would she remember him? The thought felt almost childish, but she had been the most defining person in his young life, and though he had grown past the humiliation, past the pain, past the boyish innocence, his heart still carried her imprint. Across town, Deborah Nicholas stood in front of her bedroom mirror, fixing the strap of her simple navy blue dress. She looked tired, older, more fragile than she wanted to admit. 45 now, a widow, a mother of 7-year-old twins, a principal who worked 12-hour days. But tonight she had been invited to the city's most anticipated business event because her school was partnering with Kelvin's foundation. Still, she wasn't sure she wanted to go. Her daughters, Emma and Olivia, were sitting on the bed watching her. "You look pretty, Mommy," Emma said, legs swinging. "You should go," Olivia added softly. "You never go anywhere." Deborah smiled weakly. "One night won't harm me, I guess." As she slipped on her heels, she didn't know fate was already waiting. Kelvin was speaking to a cluster of investors when the ballroom doors opened again. He turned casually and the world stopped. His breath hitched, the air thickened, his chest tightened. There she was, Deborah, her hair a little shorter now, curls framing her face softly. Her beauty matured deeper, touched by life and loss, her eyes carrying weight he didn't remember, dark circles of exhaustion, shadows of long nights, but she was still her, still the woman who ignited his entire world at 15. He couldn't move, he couldn't speak. He felt 15 again, heart pounding, palms sweating, hope trembling inside him. She didn't notice him yet. She was scanning the room politely, adjusting her purse strap. A host approached her to lead her inside, and then her eyes lifted. They met his and Deborah froze. Her lips parted slightly, her brows lifted, a soft gasp escaping her. For a moment, it felt like the world had narrowed down to just them. Two people trapped in a silent storm of recognition, shock and buried history. Slowly, hesitantly, she approached. "Kelvin," her voice whispered, fragile and disbelieving. He swallowed the flood of emotions rising in his throat. "Deborah," he breathed, like her name had been living in his lungs for years. She stared at him, searching his face, tracing the sharp jawline he didn't have as a boy, the confidence in his posture, the controlled power he carried effortlessly. "You grew up," she murmured. He smiled softly. Time has a way of doing that. She laughed faintly, almost nervously. You're the one hosting this event?" "Yes, Kelvin, you're successful." "I had good motivation," he replied gently. Her eyes softened, remembering the boy he once was, the boy who wrote a letter the world used to break him, and for a split second guilt flickered across her face. "I'm glad life has been kind to you," she whispered. He studied her closely. "Has life been kind to you?" Deborah looked away, and that was his first answer. They found a quiet corner near a small table of champagne glasses. The music hummed in the background. Guests moved around them, but Kelvin only saw her. "You look tired," he said softly. "I'm fine," she lied. "Work keeps me busy. And the girls." Her eyes widened. "You know about them." "I do my research," he said gently. "I also know you've been doing it alone." She swallowed. Her husband, Mark, had died 3 years ago, the grief carving invisible wounds across her spirit. "Deborah," he continued, voice low, "if you ever need—" "No," she cut in quietly. "You don't owe me anything." He studied her, feeling his heart ache for the pain she tried to hide. "I'm not offering from obligation," he said. "I'm offering because I care." She inhaled sharply, her face tightening. "Kelvin, don't what? Don't look at me like I'm still someone worth loving." His chest squeezed. "Why would you think you're not?" "Because I'm older," she whispered. "Because I'm tired. Because I have responsibilities. Because you're a wealthy 30-year-old man and I'm a 45-year-old widow with 2 kids. This isn't a fairy tale." "It doesn't need to be a fairy tale," he countered gently. "Just real." Her lips trembled. His voice dropped lower, softer. "I never stopped caring about you." She flinched. "Kelvin, please." "Don't say that. Why not?" "Because I can't give you anything." He stepped closer. "I don't want anything. I just want to know you." Again, she shook her head, pain flashing in her eyes. I can't do this with you." And she walked away. Kelvin watched her go, heart cracking open all over again. But this time it wasn't the pain of a boy. It was the heartbreak of a man who knew exactly what he wanted and what he was willing to fight for. Later that night, when the event ended and the ballroom emptied, Kelvin returned to his penthouse overlooking the glowing city. He loosened his tie and sat on the edge of his bed, staring at his hands. He was a powerful man, a respected man, a man with influence, money, and options. But none of it mattered, Not when the one person he had ever wanted stood in front of him again. Fragile, hurting, shutting the door on him out of fear. He let his head fall into his hands. Why did he still love her? Why did his heart still move in her direction after all these years? He knew why. Because his first love had never faded. Because she had unknowingly shaped his entire path. Because somewhere deep inside, he had carried her through every success, every city, every boardroom, every lonely night. He whispered into the empty room, "Deborah, you once said I would grow into someone incredible. I just didn't know I'd still want to come back for you." He closed his eyes and made himself a silent promise. He would not lose her again. Not to fear, not to age, not to society, not to her own self-doubt. He had waited 15 years, and he could wait longer if he had to. The morning sunlight spilled over the rows of houses, and the kids riding scooters outside. She should have felt peace, but instead her stomach twisted. The world had once been unforgiving to her, and now it was sharpening its knives again. Emma and Olivia, still in their pajamas, sat at the table munching cereal. Deborah was trying to smile at them, trying to be the strong mother they relied on, but the weight of yesterday's reunion with Kelvin pressed against her ribs. He was back, and he still cared, and she had pushed him away. Her chest tightened at the memory of the look in his eyes when she walked out on him at the event. She told herself she did the right thing. She told herself he deserved someone young, someone free, someone perfect, not a tired widow clinging to survival. But every time she breathed, she felt guilt tugging at her heart. "Mommy," Emma said, drawing her attention, "you're staring again." Deborah blinked and forced a smile. "Sorry, sweetheart. Mommy's just thinking." "About Mr. Kelvin?" Olivia asked innocently. Deborah froze. "How do you don't know anything about him?" "You said his name in your sleep," Emma whispered. Deborah's heart dropped. She held the counter for balance as tears stung behind her eyes. "Girls, finish your breakfast." She didn't want to cry. Not in front of them. Not when she had always promised herself she would be the stable one. She hurried into her bedroom and closed the door behind her. She pressed both palms against her eyes, willing herself not to break. Why did Kelvin come back? Why now? When her heart was no longer strong enough to handle another wound, she inhaled shakily. But before she could gather herself, she heard a knock on the door. Deborah didn't expect him that morning, not with the way last evening had unraveled. But the moment she opened the door and saw Kelvin on her porch, holding a small bag of groceries and wearing that soft, hesitant smile, something inside her loosened. "Hi," he said quietly, as if he wasn't sure he was allowed to be here, as if he was afraid she might slam the door shut. "Kelvin, what are you doing here?" Her voice betrayed her. It was softer than she intended. "I was in the neighborhood," he lied gently, "and I thought you might need dinner. Her company or both." Before she could respond, Emma and Olivia squeezed past her legs. "Mr. K, you're welcome." Kelvin knelt instantly, smiling as the girls wrapped their small arms around him. It melted Deborah. The easy way he connected with them, the respect in his eyes, the gentleness in his touch. He stood and lifted the grocery bag. "I brought pasta and the ingredients for your favorite Alfredo. I remember you loving it." She froze. He remembered. After all these years. "Kelvin, this isn't fair." "Come in," she whispered, stepping aside. He walked in like he'd been there 100 times before, quiet, slow, observant. He noticed the little girl's drawings on the fridge, the worn family photos, the stack of lesson plans on the table. He noticed her, and Deborah noticed him noticing. The twins tugged his hand. "We're drawing princesses, come see." Kelvin glanced at Deborah as if asking permission. Her chest tightened. She nodded. He let the girls drag him to the living room. He knelt again, fitting so naturally into their small world that Deborah had to look away. "He doesn't belong here. He's rich, powerful, wanted. This house is too small for a man like him." But then she watched him listen. Really listen to her daughters talk about crayons and tiaras. She watched him gently compliment their drawings. She watched him place one hand on the carpet for balance, his expression warm and present. He does belong here. She hated how much her heart whispered that truth. Deborah walked to the kitchen and began boiling pasta, needing space to breathe. She heard footsteps behind her. "You okay?" Kelvin asked softly. She didn't turn. "You shouldn't have come." Maybe, he said honestly, but I'm glad I did. She gripped the counter. This is dangerous, I know. He moved a little closer. But you don't look scared of me, Deborah. You look scared of wanting something again. Her breath shook. He stepped closer, close enough for his warmth to reach her spine. Let me help, he murmured. Let me cook with you at least. She exhaled. Fine, but don't stand so close. Tell me where to stand, he whispered. Her heart almost collapsed. They cooked in silence, soft, domestic, healing silence. His fingers brushed hers once when they reached for the same spoon. They both froze, the air thick. You fit here, she whispered before she could stop herself. He looked at her with a tenderness that nearly broke her. I've always belonged with you, he replied. Her eyes burned. She turned away before she drowned in the truth. The late afternoon sun bathed the park in warm gold, turning every leaf into something shimmering and gentle. Deborah hadn't planned to walk with him. Not today. Not ever. But the twins had begged for ice cream, and Kelvin had insisted on coming along. He walked beside her now, slow and respectful, with the twins running ahead of them chasing birds. You don't have to do this, she murmured. I want to, he said. Let me be here, even if it's just a walk. Just a walk. If only it were that simple. Every step felt like the past and present, merging 15 years of distance, collapsing into something unbearably real. She inhaled sharply as the breeze lifted her curls, brushing her cheek. Kelvin noticed instantly. You're quiet, he said. You make me think too much. What are you thinking about? That I shouldn't be out here with you. But you are, he replied softly. She turned her face away, flustered. Kelvin slowed his pace, forcing her to slow too. Can I ask you something? No, he smiled. I'll ask anyway. She rolled her eyes. Go ahead. He looked forward, hands in his pockets, voice almost afraid. Did you ever wonder what would have happened if things were different? What it would feel like if we gave ourselves a chance today? She freezes mid-step, a sharp inhale, eyes widening. Her lips part slightly as if to speak, but no words come. She swallowed hard. Yes, I wondered, sometimes. But life isn't built on what-ifs. I know, Kelvin said, but I think about it every day. She stopped walking. He turned to face her, searching her eyes. I loved you then. I love you now. I will love you through anything. Kelvin, she whispered, but emotion choked her voice. You think this is some teenage fantasy I'm holding on to? You think this is nostalgia or obsession or hero worship? She blinked back tears. This, what I feel, grew with me. I became a man with it. My success, my choices, my life, all shaped by the memory of you treating me like I mattered, when the world didn't. Tears finally escaped her eyes. That boy is gone, she whispered. He stepped closer. I know, but the man he became is standing right here, asking you to see him. She looked at his face, the gentleness in his eyes, the firmness in his jaw, the ache in his expression. He wasn't joking. He wasn't flattering her. He wasn't confused. He loved her openly, quietly, completely. She turned away again, wiping her cheeks. I'm too old for this. You're perfect for this, he said. Kelvin, I'm 45, and I'm 30. So young, so in love, he corrected softly. She pressed a hand to her mouth, overwhelmed. He moved behind her, close but not touching. What are you afraid of? He asked. She trembled. She didn't answer, but Kelvin whispered anyway. Let me walk with you, Deborah. Just a little longer. I won't ask for anything else today. She nodded, one vulnerable, trembling nod. And they continued walking, quietly, emotionally, side by side, unaware of the cruel neighborhood voices waiting just around the corner. Morning light spilled into her kitchen as she sat lost in thought, her coffee long gone cold. Before she could gather herself, voices carried from outside, neighbors, loud enough to reach her through the window. Can you believe her? That woman has no shame. She's trying to get the attention of that young billionaire. She's desperate. Imagine a 40-something widow running after a guy young enough to be her son. Deborah's blood ran cold. She stepped to the window and saw two younger women standing outside, arms crossed, laughing cruelly. One of them spotted her peeking and said loudly, without lowering her voice, look at her, watching us like she's the victim. Their laughter echoed through the street. Deborah didn't realize she was shaking until her knees almost gave out. She pressed a hand to her mouth, trying not to sob. She wasn't even doing anything. She wasn't flirting. She wasn't chasing Kelvin. She was just living, trying to breathe, trying to hold her life together. But for some people, her existence was an offense. Her heart felt bruised, her dignity chipped away, and then soft little footsteps approached. Emma and Olivia stood by the doorway, their small faces blooming with worry. "Mommy," Olivia whispered, eyes filling with tears. "Why are they being mean to you?" Deborah collapsed to her knees, pulling both daughters into her arms. "I don't know, baby," she whispered, swallowing a sob. "Some people, they speak without kindness." Emma's voice trembled. "We don't want them to hurt you." Deborah pressed kisses to their heads. "They won't. Mommy is okay." But she wasn't okay, not even close. Later that afternoon at the school, while Deborah was in her office dealing with paperwork and exhaustion, Kelvin walked through the hallway carrying donation documents for the school board. He spotted a small figure sitting on the floor by the lockers. Emma, her knees tucked to her chest, her eyes red. Kelvin's heart tightened instantly. He crouched down slowly so he wouldn't scare her. "Hey, sunshine," he said softly. "Why the tears?" Emma looked up, startled. But when she recognized him, she sniffled and wiped her cheeks. "Mr. K?" "Yes, sweetheart." She hesitated, then whispered something that shattered him completely. "People are saying mean things about my mommy." Kelvin's jaw clenched. "Who, neighbors?" "Mommy cried this morning." "We heard it." Kelvin closed his eyes for a moment, controlling the anger swelling in him. No child should carry that pain. No woman deserved to be shamed for simply being loved. He gently wiped Emma's tear-stained cheeks. "Emma, your mommy is an amazing woman. And mean people. They don't know her like you do." Emma's tiny voice cracked. "Mommy thinks she doesn't deserve happiness." Kelvin's breath caught. It was then, right then, that he knew he couldn't stay quiet anymore. He couldn't love Deborah from afar. He couldn't stand by while people tore at her spirit. He had to step in. He had to protect her. He had to show her and the world exactly who she was. He found her later in the empty hallway, walking toward the exit with slumped shoulders and tired eyes. "Deborah," she froze. He stepped closer, his voice soft, broken, aching. I saw Emma crying. Her eyes widened. Her breath hitched. What did she say?" "Enough," he replied gently. "Enough for me to understand." She closed her eyes, shame flooding her face. "Kelvin, please. This whole thing, it's too much." He cupped her arms gently, stopping her from escaping. "Look at me," she did. And it nearly destroyed him. She looked so fragile, like one more heartbreak would shatter her completely. "Why are you running from me?" he whispered. "Because I can't do this," she said, voice cracking. "I can't face people judging me. I can't give you what you deserve. I can't let myself believe that a man like you wants a woman like me." His breath trembled. He touched her cheek softly. "Deborah, what are you afraid of?" She shook her head, tears spilling. "I'm afraid that if I let myself love you, you'll leave eventually, and I won't survive losing someone again." Kelvin's voice broke. "I'm not going anywhere." "You say that now," she whispered painfully. "But life changes. People change. And I can't be broken again." He pulled her into his arms without thinking, holding her tightly as she cried into his chest. "You won't lose me," he murmured. "Not again, not ever." But she pushed him away, gently, trembling. "Please, stop making promises you can't keep." A week later, the community hosted a local fundraiser in the town square. Deborah attended because she had to. Kelvin attended because he knew she would be there. The whispers started the moment she walked in. "Look at her. She's ridiculous. He could be with anyone. Why her? She should be ashamed." Deborah tried to keep her head high, but her hands shook as she held a clipboard. Her heart pounded painfully. Kelvin saw her breaking. He couldn't take it. He walked to the center of the square in front of everyone, and in a voice that commanded silence, he began. "Since everyone has an opinion about the woman I love, I think it's time you heard mine." People turned. Faces froze. Conversations died. Deborah's breath left her body. Kelvin's eyes never left hers. She is not a joke. She is not desperate. She is not a scandal. She is the most extraordinary woman I have ever known. A ripple moved through the crowd. He stepped closer to her, voice steady and warm. "She is the melody that steadies my soul, the warmth that carries me through every storm. Age, it's just a number, noise in the background. But her heart, her kindness, her strength is everything I admire, everything I love, and if society has a problem, let them. Because I will stand in front of every whisper, every judgment, every cruel word, and choose her. Again and again. Deborah covered her mouth, tears streaming. The crowd was silent. Kelvin held out his hand. I'm not ashamed to love her. I'm proud to. Deborah's daughters ran to him, hugging his legs. Mr. K, Olivia whispered, can you be part of our family? Deborah's knees gave out as emotion overwhelmed her. People watched, but she no longer cared, because Kelvin walked to her and held her face gently. And for the first time in 15 years, she didn't run. The sun dipped low over Houston, stretching long lines of gold across the neighborhood. The evening breeze carried the faint scent of jasmine from the open windows. Drifting softly through Deborah's living room, she sat on the edge of the couch, hands trembling slightly, as the twins leaned over a puzzle on the floor. Every so often, Emma looked up. Every so often, Olivia giggled. And every so often, Deborah's heart tightened with fear and longing. Today had changed everything. Kelvin's public declaration, raw, unwavering, all heart still echoed in her bones. She had spent the last hour replaying it in her mind, trying to make sense of a love that never died, a love she never allowed herself to imagine could return. Mom? Emma whispered, pulling her from the storm in her mind. Deborah blinked. Yes, baby? Emma hesitated, her little fingers curling against her palm. Do you like Mr. K? Olivia looked up too, eyes wide. We like him. He makes you smile different. Deborah's breath caught. Smile different. Even children could see what she'd been trying to hide from herself. Before she could answer, a soft knock sounded at the door, steady, familiar. Her heart jumped before she could stop it. Mr. K! The twins squealed in perfect harmony, running before Deborah could gather herself. Kelvin stepped into the doorway, tall and composed, but his expression softened the moment he saw her. The warmth, the longing, the way he looked at her like she was the beginning, and the ending of everything. She felt it all. Good evening, he murmured. Deborah folded her arms lightly, trying to control the tremor in her voice. You shouldn't be here. Maybe not, he said gently. But I needed to see you and... He glanced at the twins. Someone here draws very convincing crayon invitations. Emma beamed. We told him to come. Because we want him in our family, Olivia added matter of fact. Deborah shut her eyes. Lord, give me strength. Kelvin crouched to their level. I'll always show up when you call, he said softly. Always. The twins hugged him before scampering back to their puzzle. Now it was just the two of them, standing only a few feet apart, bound by years of longing, fear, memory, and love neither of them fully knew how to hold. Deborah swallowed hard. Why are you doing this, Kelvin? Why go so far? Because you're the love of my life, he said instantly. Because I meant every word I said today. And because, he stepped closer, I can't lose you again. Her throat tightened. People will judge us. They already did, he replied. And guess what? We're still standing. Kelvin, don't tell me you don't feel anything, he whispered. Not after today. Her voice broke. Feeling something is one thing, but letting myself fall again, loving again. I lost everything once. I lost my husband. I lost my certainty. I can't lose someone else. You won't lose me, but you don't know that. I do. I know because I've waited 15 years for you. Because every part of me grows toward you like it always has. And because I am choosing you, Deborah, again and again until you choose me back. The rawness of his words tore something open inside her. Her eyes filled with quiet tears, soft and helpless. Why me? Kelvin, of every woman in this world, why me? His breath caught not from shock, but from the ache of finally being asked the question he'd carried since he was a boy. Why you? He whispered. Because you were the first person who ever saw me. Not the rich kid, not the troublemaker, not the quiet boy who sat in the back of class trying to disappear. You spoke to me like my voice mattered. You taught me to believe I had a future. When I was 15, I didn't understand love yet, but I knew it felt like you. Her tears spilled over. You made me want to be a better man. You shaped the man I became. Every success I've ever had, every dream I ever built, I chased them with the hope that one day I'd be worthy of standing in front of you again. Then he cupped her face gently, reverently. "You were my first love. You're my last love. You're the only love I ever wanted." Deborah trembled. All her life she'd been the strong one, the protector, the mother, the widow, the principal, the woman who kept herself together even when the world collapsed. But in Kelvin's arms, she felt safe for the first time in years. He rested his forehead against hers. "Let me in, Deborah. Not as the kid you once taught. As the man who loves you." She didn't speak. She didn't try. She simply leaned into him, softly at first, then fully, like her heart finally found its home. His arms wrapped around her, warm and protective, and she felt something she hadn't felt since before her husband died. Hope. The twins watched from the living room, grinning. "Mom likes him," Olivia whispered. "Told you," Emma whispered back. A week later, Houston buzzed with anticipation. Word had spread, faster than wildfire, that the UK billionaire who defended the principal was hosting another event. Invitations had been sent to the city's top figures, business partners and school board members. And though Deborah hated attention, Kelvin insisted gently, "Let me do this right." The ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and soft orchestral music. Deborah walked in wearing an emerald green gown that hugged her curves with elegant modesty. Her hair curled softly around her shoulders, her skin glowing. Kelvin saw her from across the room, and for a moment he forgot how to breathe. He walked toward her slowly, reverently. "You're unbelievable," he whispered. "You clean up well yourself," she teased nervously. Kelvin couldn't take his eyes off her. "Stay with me tonight." She held his gaze. "I'm here, aren't I?" And with that he offered his hand. She took it without hesitation. But the peace didn't last long. A familiar voice broke through the crowd, Mrs. Turner, her colleague. "I heard the rumors," she said to Deborah. "You're really doing this? Dating a former student? A man 15 years younger?" Deborah stiffened. Before she could speak, Kelvin stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said calmly, "but she doesn't owe anyone an explanation." Mrs. Turner scoffed. "It's embarrassing." "People are talking." Kelvin turned slightly, addressing everyone who had begun to gather. Then they should hear the truth. Deborah froze. "Kelvin," but he squeezed her hand gently, reassuringly, and she let him speak. "She is not someone you whisper about," he began, voice steady and strong. "She's someone you respect." The room grew silent. "She is the kindest, strongest, most compassionate woman I've ever met. She raised her daughters alone after losing her husband. She's shaped hundreds of students, including me, with her heart and her integrity. More people gathered now. Elites, community members, parents, teachers. And you want to judge her?" Kelvin continued, emotion building in his voice. "Because she deserves love? Because someone younger sees her brilliance? Because a man who's spent his whole life admiring her finally has the courage to love her openly?" He moved closer to her, placing a hand over his heart. "She's not just a sweet soul with a heart of gold. She's the melody that steadies me, the warmth that keeps my world alive. Age is nothing but a whisper compared to the kind of love she carries. Her essence, her courage, her kindness, that's what defines her. That's what I cherish, and I will stand here in front of all of you and say this proudly." He lifted her hand to his lips. "She is the love of my life, and I wouldn't want her any other way." Deborah covered her mouth, tears slipping free. Someone in the crowd began to clap, then another, and another, until the entire room applauded. Kelvin turned to her, voice low and raw. "Say yes to me. Say yes to us." Deborah stepped forward, tears shining like stars. "Yes," she whispered. "I'm not afraid anymore." He kissed her slowly, deeply, lovingly as the crowd cheered. 3 months later, on a quiet afternoon in her backyard garden, surrounded by soft lights and the giggles of 2 little girls, Deborah and Kelvin exchanged vows. Emma and Olivia held flowers. Deborah held Kelvin's trembling hands. Kelvin held his whole heart in front of her. "I waited 15 years for you," he whispered. "And I'm spending the rest of my life loving you," she answered. "You already are," he murmured. They kissed as the twins shouted, "Mommy married Mr. K." 1 year later, their home was alive with laughter, soft cries, and the kind of joy that could fill every corner. Their first baby boy lay sleeping in Deborah's arms, his tiny chest rising and falling in gentle rhythm, while Emma and Olivia ran around the living room, squealing with delight as their Bernese mountain dog lumbered after them. wagging his tail like a furry metronome to the chaos. Kelvin leaned against the doorway, watching them with a smile that softened even the edges of his usually commanding face. He reached for Deborah's hand, brushing his thumb lightly over hers. "Look at this," he whispered, "our little world." Deborah looked down at her son, then at her daughters laughing around him, and finally at Kelvin. Her eyes glimmered with tears she didn't bother to hide. "I never thought happiness could feel like this," she murmured. Kelvin crouched beside her, resting his hand gently on the baby's tiny chest. "It's perfect," he said softly. "Just like you, just like all of us together." The girls ran up, tugging at Deborah's arms, demanding stories, giggles, and hugs. The dog nudged the baby gently, as if claiming him as part of the family too. Deborah laughed a deep, full sound that mingled with the girls' shouts, and the dog's low, contented growls. Kelvin kissed her temple. "We've waited so long for this," he murmured. "Every year, every moment apart, it led us here." Deborah rested her head against his shoulder, watching their children and their dog tumble around the room. "I love us," she said softly. "And I love you," Kelvin replied, wrapping his arms around her. "Every day, all of it. This chaos, this love, this family, it's everything I ever dreamed of." Outside, the late afternoon sun poured through the windows, casting golden light on their little world. And in that warm, messy, perfect home, surrounded by laughter, love, and the soft weight of tiny hands and paws, Deborah finally allowed herself to believe that forever could feel like this. And just like that, a vow made by a 15-year-old boy finally became a promise fulfilled. "Thank you for staying with me through this beautiful journey. I hope this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, reminding us that love, no matter how delayed, always finds its way home." If you felt something, if a moment lingered with you, please share your thoughts. Until next time, stay safe, stay loved, and keep your heart open. This is Vintage Mike Tales.